Great. All right, so I'm going to do it in two parts. I'm going to be a little bit long. I know there's a lot of memories to do, but if you care about the history of Ultimate and history of Michigan State Ultimate, I think you guys will really enjoy this. So,
all right.
So the first part is the history of Ultimate from somebody who saw it happen, and there are some things that I bet you don't know, and then the history of Michigan State Ultimate is the second part. All right, so the history of Ultimate started with a guy named Joel Silver, who you might have heard of. I'll tell you more about Joel Silver later. So he went to a summer camp, and they were playing Frisbee football, and the counselor said, let's do Frisbee football where you can't run with it. And that was really the only rule. And Joel came back after the summer to Maplewood, and he thought it was a cool game. So he was, for people that know, a certain kind of suburban area where the not today's suburbia, but back then where houses were close together and there were lots of streets. Whatever. So there were a bunch of guys on his block that were about his age, and he introduced the game to his friends, and they played in the street. They probably played other games like stickball and kickball or whatever, and he brought this game, and everybody thought it was cool, and they decided to call themselves the Richmond Avenue Gang. They lived on Richmond Avenue in Maplewood, and that was it for a while. They kept playing. They were like really into it, and they were not seniors in high school. They were underclassmen, and as they got older, a bunch of them were on the student council and influential. And then the first big thing that happened was the Richmond Avenue Gang challenged the student council to an ultimate game. So this was the first ever ultimate game. This was 1969. So it was brought up as a resolution. Of course, being high school kids, they debated about it for 15 or 20 minutes, and then it passed unanimously. So that was the first game.
In the parking lot?
Probably, because they were used to playing on asphalt, so they probably played on the parking lot.
Ultimate?
I'm sorry?
Is the name Ultimate, is that going to be later?
It's unclear. A couple people take credit for calling it Ultimate. It's the ultimate game, and so I'm not sure. There's some ego investment in. I'm not sure, but it was known as Ultimate extremely early. So here's another part that's very misunderstood. That's not very well known. The guys who started it, it was just a game to them and not a sport. And this is the key part, is that to them it was just a big goof. Could somebody get my backpack, which has that Target thing on it right there? Yeah, it was just a big goof. There is a famous picture of the Columbia High School ultimate varsity Frisbee team in the parking lot.
So it was campy.
Not only
the bag?
The bag, yeah,
Okay.
sorry. And not only was it campy, and actually Joel Silver, who had a bit of an ego, everybody wore these white shirts that looked like this, or white sweatshirts.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
Except for Joel Silver's in the upper left. He's a big guy, and he's wearing a black one of these with white writing. They had to be different. I remember a couple years. I remember a couple years later when we would play other high schools, they would go, "Well, it's unfair. I mean, you guys are a varsity team." And the answer to that was, you can print anything, dude. But the picture also, in the caption of the picture, and these are in at least 2 Ultimate Frisbee history books. In the caption, it says the team manager, somebody Oshinsky, and team, I don't know, executive direct, whatever. So the guy who was listed as one of those was the school narc Anybody old enough to know what right? And the other guy was a school janitor. I mean, it was a total goof, and it was just a goof. It was just a game. And then Joel Silver graduated, and he went to Hollywood to try to make some money, and ended up producing some movies like Lethal Weapon and Matrix. And you can look him up. He's a gazillionaire. In fact, we had a 50th high school reunion, a 50th ultimate reunion in San Diego. I know Fred was there, and we had to convince him to come. And finally, the morning that we wanted him to speak, he was like, "All right, I'll get in my helicopter and I'll fly in." And
Wow.
he was in Hollywood. It was in San Diego. Whatever. Okay. So the next key turning point was that the underclassmen, after he graduated, they wanted to make it a sport. So they like formalized the rules, and so I should say I count Joel Silver sort of as patient zero for those who know the medical stuff, and then these other guys were like patient one, a couple of patient ones, and
Now, did Stork
a
play for him?
thrill. I'll get to Stork in a minute. Now that you mention it, but the answer is no, not this early. Later on, when I played a lot, after in a distant haze, I used to coach some high school teams, whatever. A rumor went around that I invented the game, and so I kept saying, no, I didn't, but I knew those guys. But actually, and I used to kept telling my wife, I knew all the guys except for patient zero. I'd never met Joel, and one of the thrills of my life was at that 50th reunion. I finally met patient zero.
Oh, wow.
Big thrill. Anyway, so in around 70 or 71, they formalized some rules. And by the way, the rules are crazy. The rules state, I have a copy of, I think, the 3rd edition rule. The rules state that sidelines can be natural boundaries, but really you don't need them. And the goal lines are 60 yards apart, and end zones are unlimited. So if you think about it,
Couple lines.
if you think about it, it's 2 lines circumnavigating the whole world. Right? So it was crazy, and when I started playing, I learned you never, when you're guarding somebody in the end zone, you never get in front of them, because the guy will just bomb it over your head and you score a goal. Of course, everybody now who plays, it's like you always get in front of the guy. Anyway, so they formalized the rules and they sent them to the student councils of all the local high schools. And in 1971, Columbia High School was the first inter-high school game. They played against the next town, Melbourne High School. So that was the first high school game was in 71. In 72, the first guys who were very passionate about making it a sport graduated and started all these teams in the Northeast, all the Ivy League schools, we had a
The graduates of Columbia went off to do that.
Right. So, and that was like the ethic of the team. When you graduate high school, you start a team at college, and that was drilled into me. That's what people do. So this is a great Spirit of Ultimate story. So there were 4 active teams. There was Princeton and Rutgers. The very first teams were Princeton, Rutgers, and Clark and Tufts, which are both in the Massachusetts area, Boston area. And Clark and Tufts, so they were going to set up the first ever intercollegiate ultimate game. Princeton and Rutgers were also going to set up the first ever intercollegiate, or whatever. They were both going to start a game. And I should have mentioned one other thing. The 72 ultimate high school team, a big factor was the football star, the guy who was like the running back and middle linebacker, quit football to play ultimate. And a couple other guys did. So we were like, at first we were like the weirdos who couldn't handle sports, and that was a big thing. That was a big thing. And Irv Kalb, I think, played wide receiver. He also joined the Ultimate Team. And at the time, he was probably the best player in the country, Irv Kalb. And so he started the Rutgers team, and the other guy, another guy, started the Princeton team. So, all right. So here's, I'm sorry, I'm going on too long, but here's a really cool story. So Irv Kalb, the captain of the Rutgers team, goes to the school newspaper. He wants to drum up publicity. You know, there's going to be a game. So the editor of the school newspaper goes, you know what? In about a month, it's going to be the anniversary of the first ever intercollegiate football game, which was also Rutgers and Princeton. And you guys should play on that day. You can even play on the same spot. And, you know, so the same spot, it had been paved over. It's a parking lot. So you should know that the first ever intercollegiate ultimate game was also on a parking lot.
Wow.
Not a lot of diving, I guess.
So, right. And that was the excuse I used through my career. Like,
Learn how to play on asphalt.
The people who I played with, guys in the 70s, you know that I hardly ever dove. Unless the grass was wet, I didn't dive. So my excuse was, well,
your
you know.
excuse on this field is beautiful.
We didn't make my excuse was that I was used to playing on asphalt.
Who is it?
Right, you didn't make me dive.
Who is it? Hey, Kelly!
Kelly!
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
Kelly Green!
And Jane. And Jane.
Around.
Hello.
How you doing? Great to see you again.
Hi, Kelly.
Well, if she wants to hear about the first intercollegiate game, okay. So the Princeton and Rutgers call up the other teams and said, you know, I hear you guys are going to play a game. When are you playing? And they said, oh, October, da 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 da. And the Rutgers team said, well, our game's scheduled for November. And this is so cool. They said, do you mind if you don't play in October, so that we could be the first ever game, because we think we can get a lot of publicity out of it. So think about this. Clark and Tufts were about to create ultimate history by playing in the first ever game. Right. Sorry. But think about the cool guys who played. This is true ultimate spirit. The guy said, yeah, sure, no problem. You guys play first. It'll be better for the sport. So
Yeah.
that's how Clark and Tufts ended up not playing the first ever game. Anyway, the Princeton Rutgers game, they drummed up a lot of publicity, and because of it was the anniversary of and the same spot as the ever first intercollegiate game, like the media took off with it. And I don't know, anybody who grew up in the East Coast might remember there was a famous picture for the Yankees, Jim Bouton. When he retired, he was a sportscaster. He was a sports guy, and so they had that game. There's a picture of it. There's like 1,000 people showed up.
Oh, wow.
Including Jim Bouton, and and reporting, and they were like, this is unbelievable. This is going to be like the greatest sport in no time at all. And their second game, about 24 people showed up. But there are pictures of that game, of the opening pull-off. I'm not positive. I think because the field is a little bit short, it was 6-on-6. I'm not positive. And a woman played in that game, by the way.
Oh, wow.
On the, possibly more than one. I'm not sure. All right, so I started playing with the team around the high school team around then. I'll just skip forward. So I graduated the high school in '75, so now I'm going to start part two. Part two is when Michigan State was on the quarter system, so we started late. I got here in about the third week in September is when school started. There was this guy, one of the main organizers of the Columbia team. They were very organized. You know, they were serious about making this a sport. He was like Mr. List guy, among other things. So he had a list of every influential ultimate player in the whole country, or sometimes events players too. So there were 3 guys in the state of Michigan that were on that list. So I had that list, and they were Frisbee Johnson, the captain of
Kalamazoo.
Kalamazoo. What was his name? Bill Shelton, or whatever. Calvin College, and Mark Banghart was on the list. So the first thing I did, the first day when I got to school, it was a Thursday, I called up K College. We used to call this guy occasionally just to hear his greeting, because he would pick up the phone and say, "Frisbee here." His nickname was Frisbee. It was Frisbee Johnson.
Frisbee Johnson is, yeah.
Yep.
It's like, "Hey Fred, check this out. I'm calling this guy. Listen to what he says." So I said, "Hey, do you guys have an ultimate team?" And he said, "Well, you know, we played once last year. They played Calvin College once the year before." And I said, "But you know, we can get together. You know, we can get together a team." I said, "Great. So this is what we'll do. A week from Saturday, so it's 9 days. A week from Saturday, we'll come down and play you guys for a game." And he's like, "Great, we'll be here." So I hung up the phone. It's like, okay, now all I need is an ultimate team. And that made it easier to recruit. So I lived on 5th floor Wilson, and I went up and down the halls, knocking on doors, and everybody said, "I don't know how to play ultimate." Of course, they didn't know how to play. I don't know how to throw frisbee, and I had a great answer. It was like, "It doesn't matter, because we have a game in 9 days, and we don't have a team, so we'll take anybody."
No tryouts,
And
no cuts.
right, no tryouts, no cuts. What was really cool was 4 years later, playing in nationals, and I look at the team, and you know, a big core, maybe at least a third, were guys that lived on 5th floor Wilson. That, you know,
Yeah.
Ray Turco's one. Fred lived three doors down from me. I was 5'25", you were 5'29", right?
Wow.
Tom Rombout, Stan Williams, and a couple other guys that I unfortunately can't remember.
Dan Williams. Wow.
Yeah, Tom Rombout's roommate. So
I saw you practicing.
we only had, what's that?
I was in the dorm next door at Holden
Okay.
and saw you practicing.
There you
Is
go.
that how you came across this?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, me too. I was walking by down the hall, walking by this field one day, and I knew Kelly. I had met ultimate people at a Guts ultimate tournament in Ann Arbor. And I was playing Guts at the time. They're like, "Hey,
Wow.
Guts, come on over."
Sue
And
Guts,
and I
nice.
got somebody took my picture in the state news, and I'm wearing denim overalls.
Oh, wow.
my jean overalls.
So Eric, our team only had one car. Only one guy had a car, so half our team hitched. I was with the group that hitched to Kalamazoo. We played the first game, we lost, but we had a good time, and that's sort of how the team going. Now, a couple months later, so there was no national organization for Ultimate. It was sort of run by what they call the East Coast Captains Meeting, and just by consensus. So that over Christmas break, people would come back to the high school and have a big meeting, and we'd figure out what the spring looked like. I think Mark might have come that first year.
I think I did. Yeah.
And you played on the parking lot.
Played on
and
the
we had
parking
a
lot.
meeting, and
Yeah.
the meetings were like free-for-alls. I mean, like one person offered a proposal to change Ultimate to 6-on-6 instead of 7-on-7, and everybody was like, no. And he said, "Well, has anybody ever tried it?" Like, everybody was quiet. Anyway, that didn't pass. And I remember that meeting. That was the meeting that put limits on the end zones. It's 30-yard end zones.
Really? That meeting?
But, you know, as soon as somebody said that way it'll fit on a football field, we were very anti-establishment. It's like, no, that can't be the reason. Anyway, so the guy, so they're talking about how they're going to have the national championships. So I raised my hand and I said you should have regionals that feed it. So let me go back 1 year. Up until 75, Ultimate, there weren't a lot of colleges that played. So they had the even before that, you would go to a team, you would go to a place to play a team with 24 minutes stop clock time, And games lasted almost 3 hours. You're exhausted. So we would go play one game and come back. And so the first ever tournament happened in '75, and they invited 8 teams to play in they called it the Intercollegiate Championships. And I have that disc at home. I couldn't find it. So by '76, Ultimate was starting to spring out all over the place, for example, the Midwest. And I said, so back then when they invited the 8 best teams, it was everybody knew who the 8 best teams were. There was like no argument. But now with teams, and there was rumors of a team in Florida and one in California, it's like you can't have a national tournament that's invitational. That was my argument. And you need to have regionals. And the guy who was running the tournament, I'll not mention his name. He was from Hampshire College, and he and I got into this big argument, and people were telling me, like, no, they were telling me, cool out, your team will get invited, don't worry. So, you're young and idealistic. I'm like, no, that's not the point. You guys have regional tournaments. So finally, we actually decided that the Midwest would have regionals, nobody else would. We would have regionals. Okay, so we had regionals in the spring of '76, and unbelievably we came in 3rd. I was like, I really thought we were the best team. I was so crushed. So
We choked against Kalamazoo College. I choked anyway.
I must have blocked that memory out. I had the whole tournament out. So we qualified for the nationals, and back then, having tournaments with multiple teams was a very new thing. So they had just a 16-team bracket, single elimination. So we drove 14 hours from here to Amherst. Anybody remember? Anybody here on that trip?
We played one game.
And so not only that, but they scheduled us for the first game.
So we got
here's the disc. Here's the disc from that tournament.
Oh,
They weren't even 165. Look good.
No, it's a
We
master.
all play with masters then. So we drove 14 hours, and they scheduled us for the earliest time slot possible, which was like so unfair. It was like 2 p.m. on Friday.
Not only was it 14 hours, it was a 14-hour red eye.
Right. We had to get there we probably left around like 8 or 9 at night. Got in around 1 or 1:30 and had our game at 2. And so not only did we have the earliest time slot, but they seated us 15th. I don't know if this was on purpose or not. So we had to play the number 2 seed. The second best team in the country at the time was Hampshire College. The guy who during the debate, when I kept saying it's not fair that you can't have an invitational tournament and call it nationals, and he finally said, so run your own damn tournament. So I was like just really mad at him. And so I don't know if he did the seeding, but we ended up playing the number 2 team in the country. So one other just a tangent. Hampshire College was like the hippie college. They just closed this year. It's so sad.
Yeah.
Did they just close?
Yeah. This year.
They
So sad.
and they were total counterculture. Rutgers, on the other hand, was the dominant team for a couple of years. They were clearly the best team. They were the number 1 seed. They were the first team that had uniforms and names on the back and numbers. So as a protest, when Hampshire played them, they all wore different colored shirts with the same number on the back. It was great. And against us, anybody, you might have heard of this. If you're old enough, you might remember. There used to be college frat contests with how many people can you stuff in a Volkswagen?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So against us, they did a wholesale sub. They stuffed 7 guys in a VW Beetle and drove out onto the field. 7 guys got out and 7 other guys came out.
During our game.
Yes.
Wow. I remember that. Wow.
We ended up losing only by 3 points, 15-12. But we were done. It was still Friday afternoon, and other teams are just starting to show up for the tournament, and we're already eliminated. It's like, so sometime shortly after that, we did play a game the next day because we were already there, right? We played a really good game against Glassboro. We lost in overtime.
Wow.
But we, I don't remember if 77 was also in Amherst, and I can't remember if that was already, if that was single elimination or not. Also, I can't remember. But sometime around that, the powers that be, the East Coast Captains Meeting powers that be, using us as an example, said we can't do single elimination anymore. We got to do something else. And John Cohn, who JC is on the Cornell team, he's the person thinking about us who thought up pool play. Shorter games, pool play, and the top 2 go on. We were very psyched about that. My story's almost coming to an end because I graduated in 78. 78 nationals, it was 4 pools of 4. We won our first 2 games. All the Midwestern teams won their first 2 games. And I know Brian will remember this because he brought this up to me about 10, 15 years later. Went back to the dorm. Our next game, our 3rd game was a night game. So we went back to the dorm and we were hanging out and we stumbled upon a room with a piano. Remember that? Oh, you brought it up. And we sang that song. Stay just a little bit longer. And we improvised the words. The other teams, it was great. It was one of those moments, buried in my brain and my heart. A real bonding moment. And you don't remember it. So that night we played Princeton for the night game. Now the day games, it was very windy. People might remember if you played in Amherst, sometimes it was very windy there. The night game, still night. And they played a zone. We had never faced a zone. We had never even thought about a zone before. And back then, when you play offense against a man, one of the cardinal rules is you don't throw cross-field passes because somebody's going to come up and intercept it. I mean, obviously now you do swing passes, right? I mean, even back then, almost, but we were very disciplined. We didn't throw cross-field passes. Well, imagine playing against a zone, a good zone, and you're not throwing any cross-field passes. We got hammered. We lost by like 7 points. The very windy games, we won, but we were better, but because it was so windy, the scores were low. We only won by a little bit. So there turned out to be a 3-way tie for first in our pool, and because we lost by the largest margin against Princeton, got eliminated again. All right, so I'm going to just talk a little bit about 79, and then we're going to stop. I graduated in 78, but I just felt to my heart, I need to play 4 years on a college team. So Fred became the captain, and I was in contact with him, and I said, I want to come back for regionals and nationals, and Fred's like, yeah, okay, well, we can make that work. No, he was very enthusiastic about it. So we came to Madison. Regionals was in Madison. I actually showed up right after the first game. We had lost to Yellow Springs in pool play. But then we won the rest of our games. And the next day we won our semis against Madison, right?
I think they played Madison in the final. Maybe it was Western
No,
Kentucky,
no.
or I can't remember.
No, I think it was Madison in the semis.
Okay.
We beat them. And then our finals was against Yellow Springs. So the whole team was like very intimidated because, we just lost to them yesterday. And for me, I wasn't there for the loss. So to me, it's like, hey, we're winning every game. We're going to win this one too, of course. I don't remember much of the game except that Bill Sefton blew out his knee during the game. But it was somewhat close. It was a hard-fought battle. And by the way, Yellow Springs had a very poor attitude. We felt like if there's any justice in the world, we should win this game.
Yeah, man.
And we won. We won. And the UPA at that time, this whole my whole story is about near misses. Right? The UPA just set up for the first time. There's going to be 5 regions, so we're now going to be, whereas before in pool play we kept losing, we never made it to the second day. Now there's going to be just a pool of 5, and top 2 play for the finals. So that was in Penn State in '79, and we went and we played. We lost a round robin game to Glassboro, although it was closer, but Glassboro had the best zone in the country at the time.
Yep,
We lost
yep.
in the
Yep.
And then we won our games, and then we had a game against Santa Barbara. Now, Santa Barbara had already beaten Glassboro by a decisive score. So we figured out, and Glassboro never knew this. I spoke to them like 10 years afterwards, like they never knew. We figured out if we could beat Santa Barbara at all, we're in the finals. Because it'd be a 3-way tie, and Glassboro had the worst tiebreakers. So it was a close game. We were actually up by 1 at the half, and we sort of choked it away. I was telling Fred, I'm not going to belabor it. I had my best play of my life in that game. I also had my worst play of my life in that game.
They were right next to each other too.
No. The best was at the beginning, and it rallied the team. It was great. I had this unbelievable diving block, and at the end, I let it just bounce off
And it hit
my
the ground.
chest.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a little bit wet.
Show us that move.
And at the end of the game, we were down by 1, and we had a drive going, and it just bounced off my chest. And it was a turnover, and we ended up losing by, I think they picked it up and scored. We ended up losing by 2, and I actually, I was depressed regarding Ultimate for a whole year after that. I couldn't believe it.
That was the tournament we
We
should have
were
won.
so
We could've
close, because we would have played Santa Barbara again in the finals, and I thought we were a little bit better than them. Anyway, so thank you for letting me be so long-winded. I just want to say one more thing. And that is that every one of you guys, do this for me. Pat yourself on the back. Every one of you guys had a hand in keeping this team going. So whereas I get a lot of credit because I was, patient zero for this team, I was only on campus 3 years. And if you look around, I see guys that start in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, and women's world championship, national world. And I also want to credit you guys for keeping that original spirit.
Yeah.
I want to give big credit to Fly for that, because he was there at the beginning. When he came back in the 90s, he helped teach everybody the importance and spirit of the game. So really, this is a celebration of you guys, because if the team had stopped, this wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't be here. I'd be somewhere else, So way to go, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Further cast our boat on the waters, right?
Yeah, when I started it, I was totally not thinking about the future. It was just like,
Jeez.
I'll have a team when I'm going to school here.
At 18?
I just,
But
I
you know
didn't
everything.
think of what would happen afterwards. And to say that you guys exceeded my wildest expectations, it's like, totally, it's just like unbelievable. So really credit to all you guys, and this weekend to Fly and Dee Dee helping and whoever else helped. you know, and I was even wondering whether I should come this weekend.
Oh.
As soon as I got here, I was like, what the hell was I thinking? I should be. So, gosh, so many memories, and
I have a proposal.
I want other people to share their memories too. I could go on forever.
I have a proposal. Let's put Eric in the middle and have a group hug.
There we go.
Yeah, yeah.
heads, roly-poly fish heads, eat them up, yum. Fish heads, heads, roly-poly fish heads, fish heads, fish heads, eat them up, yum.
In the morning, laughing happy fish heads. In the evening, floating in the soup.
Fish heads, roly-poly fish heads, fish heads, eat them up, yum.
Ask a fish head anything you want to. They won't answer, they can't talk.
Fish heads, roly-poly fish heads, eat them up, yum.
I took a fish head out to see a movie. Didn't have to pay to get it in.
Fish heads,